Hello everyone, this is Taryn with Wonderfully Made Handcrafting, and welcome to the last day, day 14 of By the Well for God's Equipped by Jesus devotional kit. Now, I was watching a live by Tim Holtz the other day and was really inspired to do a mixed media background again. And so I took out some of these sprays that I have, and so I am spraying some Distress Oxide and also just some Distress Spray Stain on it and just getting a nice colorful background. Now, I do have to say I was using a scrap piece of paper because it would cover the pocket card that I was working on. And you just try to use stuff up that you have. And this paper is not the best quality. I would really highly suggest using the heavy stock paper from Tim Holtz if you want to do something fun with all this wet mixed media. The paper kind of started falling apart a little bit, but that's okay because it kind of goes along with my grungy look that I end up coming out with. So you'll see in the end how that kind of fares. So as I was watching that Tim Holtz live, I was reminded how much I love the look of Crackle Paste with some embossing glaze on top of it. Now, it does take a little bit of time, so you'll see throughout this video that I have very different lighting in this video because it just takes some time to wait for everything to dry. But I am using my Crackle texture paste through this stencil, the Faith Damask stencil that was an add-on to this kit. This first run does not go well. The Crackle paste kind of seeped under the stencil because I was adding a little too much on just in that one area, and I really didn't like that. And so what I ended up doing is just taking a baby wipe and kind of splotting it everywhere all over the card. So I'll kind of have a little bit of crackle everywhere. And this kind of adds to the disintegration of my paper even more so, but that's okay. We're going to just keep on working with it. I will make sure that that is completely dry before I try the stencil again. And I actually really like how that aged the card even more so. So I've washed and dried my stencil and I'm going in for try 2. And here's what I'm doing a little bit differently this time. This time I'm laying just one thin layer of Crackle Paste down. That will kind of hold my stencil in place while I add a little bit more on top of it because I want some bigger cracks in this Crackle Paste. The thinner layers you have of Crackle Paste, the more micro cracks you're going to see, and it'll be a little bit harder to tell. So that is why I want a little bit more on top. And as I peel this up, it turns out great. The only thing is since I have used like a lower quality paper, it does kind of pull up some of that paper since the Crackle Paste is wet. I am now spreading out some embossing glaze on top of the Crackle Paste while it's still wet. So I'm using some antique linen, then I'll change to vintage photo, and then I'll finish this up with some walnut stain embossing glaze. Now, I just let this sit here for a couple hours to dry completely. I want to make sure that that Crackle Paste is good and dry before I heat emboss it. And so that is why I just let it sit for a number of hours. You'll be able to start seeing the cracks, and then you know that it's time to move on to the next step. So I'll tap off that extra embossing glaze and save that to the side as a party mix since there's multiple colors involved, and then I'll turn to my heat gun to heat set this embossing glaze on top of the Crackle Paste. This gives a really cool look and almost looks like cracked tile. After everything is melted on top of the Crackle Paste, I will take out my Distress crayons. I really love this neutral set that I have, and I will use some walnut stain to draw on top of the cracks and just rub it in with my finger. Now, this can hurt a little bit if you have some sharp cracks, so just be a little bit careful. I had some that were a little sharp in certain areas, so I did have to, be careful as I was rubbing it in. The Distress crayons really help these cracks stand out, but now I want to make this whole background glossy. I really liked the look of how the embossing glaze made everything glossy, and now I want to make it look like one solid piece of tile. And so I take my resist spray and spray it all the way on, let it sit for just a couple seconds, and then I'll dab off the excess with my paper towel. The afternoon sun was getting really harsh in this video, so I decided to wait a couple hours and film at night. So I've already typewritten out the back side, which is from Colossians 3:16, which says, "Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly, teaching and admonishing one another in all wisdom, singing psalms and hymns and spiritual songs with thankfulness in your hearts to God." And so I decided to add that to the back side to kind of conclude this devotional. And now I'm adding a little bit of lace and that velvet trim. Both are from Hobby Lobby. I kind of want to make it look like a book cover, and so that is why I'm adding this to the side. And once I trim these off, I do decide to add some eyelets to it. So I take out my Crocodile and make sure to measure everything out so it's not covering any of the verse on the back side. And I'll punch 3 different holes in this velvet trim. Now this is a lot for the Crocodile to punch through because I have velvet and lace trim and a whole bunch of layers on this paper and then a second paper on the back side. But it does pretty well punching those holes, and then I'm just going to kind of stuff these little eyelets in. This last one was a little tricky to get in. I'm not sure why, if there was, some texture paste or crackle paste, on the back side that was making it rough, but it ends up working out fine. Now you will see the backs of these eyelets, which aren't the prettiest thing on the back side. It doesn't bug me too much. I wish that you didn't have to see them, but for beauty on the front side, sometimes you have to have a little bit of ugliness on the back. Originally, I was going to use this floral die cut, but I decided not to, but I will take out some of the paper that was part of the paper pack and create some greenery. This is from the Garden Greens die cut set from Tim Holtz, and I am just making a little almost wreath on this card. This specific paper was getting a little lost in the background since it was so similar in texture and color, and so I decided to add a little bit of forest moss to deepen it up some. I want these greenery pieces to stand out just a little bit more, but I'm really not sure how to do that yet. So instead I move on to the next step and I start creating a title. I take out my Dymo label maker and just spell out armor. I know this has a really wide font when you punch out the embossing letters, and so I decide just a simple title would be best for this card. Now I do have to say that these labels are already sticky on the back, but it is not sticky enough for all this texture, and so I end up adding some Barely Arts precision glue after this is done. At this point I remembered that I purchased some of this metallic copper colored thread from Walmart, and I am just making some bunches of it to put underneath the greenery pieces. This will really help those greenery pieces stand out from the background, but honestly I did cut out a bunch of footage of this. It just takes a little bit of time to get that placement that you want, and just kind of pull all those threads and tuck them under all the little leaves. So it does take time. I do think it is totally worth it though. Now, sometimes I create something that I love so much, like I loved this background so much that it was a little hard to cover some of it up with these greenery pieces, but I have to realize that in the end, it's just finding all those little details that you love. You'll still be able to see the background, and so just looking at this card up close, you'll be able to see all the texture and everything that's involved in this card. And so I have to realize that it's okay to cover a little bit of those things that you love up. It's something that's really hard for me. I'm not really sure why, but I know that I love all the layers in the end. And so I just have to remember that you still see those pieces, you just have to look for them a little harder. Before this card is done, I do remember that I have to add my number to the back side. So remember that it coincides with day 14's devotional. So I take out these clear alpha stickers and just add 14 to the back side. And then this card and devotional kit is done. If you've enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to my channel. You can also follow me over on Instagram at Wonderfully Made Handcrafting. I'll try to link everything I use down below in the description. And if you missed day 13's process video, I'll link that one next. I hope you have a wonderful day, guys. Bye.